Hi everyone, my name is Alejandro Serrano, and today I'm going to be talking about a study that I did last year which looks to assess changes to a student's anxiety levels following a mindfulness meditation intervention. So anxiety and stress pop up everywhere in the media. It seems like every day we get articles in all forms of media. We see stress in the workplace, stress in our homes, and even sometimes stress and anxiety within our own dreams. So people have taken to a variety of ways to try and combat these effects of stress and anxiety. Some people use stress medications to try and self-medicate. Others engage in therapy and speak with a therapist to work ways around their anxiety. And then others use something like a glass of wine or even a bottle of wine at the end of the day to try and ease the experiences of their anxieties. So my question is, should we disregard these self-care strategies in light of something new, something that could be more helpful? That might be a bit far, because different treatments help different people. But what I'd like to know is, specifically, can a novel strategy specific to students help reduce anxiety where they need it most? So the anxiety that university students face happens at different points within the rollercoaster experiences that is a university semester. Even with adequate planning, there's going to be very different ways that students can deal with their anxiety. So given the resources that students have available, what is an effective way that they can help manage their symptoms of anxiety? Mindfulness interventions, which we'll get to a little bit later, have also been shown within therapies and interventions that are available, for example, at counseling, that can help reduce anxiety, but over a long period of time. They do these things called longitudinal interventions, which are basically 8-week sort of one-to-one dealings with a therapist to try and reduce anxiety. The problem is, these take a very long time, and I'd like to know if we can use a one-time, short-term mindfulness intervention to reduce anxiety in students. So some quick disclaimers before we go any forwards. Firstly, we're going to be looking at anxiety, not stress, and there are some minor differences between the two. Whereas stress is a perceived emotional strain right before you interact with a stimuli, anxiety also encompasses worry and fear. Specifically, we're going to be looking at a subset of anxiety called state anxiety, which also we'll speak about a little later. And also, in this study, we considered non-clinical symptoms of anxiety. Anxiety can also be considered a diagnosable mental disorder where the symptoms are far more pervasive than they might be in the general population, but symptoms of anxiety can exist even without a diagnosis. So we were interested in looking at those specific symptoms. Now, there are two different types of anxiety. Some of us have friends where when they receive an assignment and a deadline, they seem not too worried about that deadline. They might leave it until the week before or even the night before, and they won't be freaking out before they have to submit that assignment. On the other hand, we have some other friends who, as soon as they get the assignment, they start questioning it. They want to go to all the contact hours that the professor has available. They go to the library to try and take out all of the books, and they're always worrying about the outcomes and the potential grades that they might get from this assignment. This pertains to trait anxiety, and it differs across different individuals. It's essentially a baseline level of stress that always exists, and it's our predisposed way to react to looming stressful stimuli. The subset which we were interested in is state anxiety. And state anxiety is the level of anxiety that varies depending on your environmental context. For example, if you imagine yourself warm and cozy in your flat, curled up reading a book, you're likely to imagine to be yourself much less stressed than you would be giving a presentation, for example, or standing outside an exam hall about to go in. The fact that that emotional stimuli which you're about to interact with provokes different levels of stress, or anxiety, I should say, pertains to this state anxiety, which is a physiological arousal that prompts. Mindfulness, which I mentioned earlier, is a psychological intervention that we can use to reduce anxiety. And it's defined as the bringing of attention to experiences happening in the present moment, disregarding the past, disregarding the future, and using mediation and training to focus on exactly that. And there are three main pillars which we use in mindfulness. The first of which is the focusing of attention. You can only be concerned with the here and now. The second is to retract yourself from any stimuli which may be distracting. For example, any deadlines you have looming, any meetings that you may have later. And lastly is the idea of muscle relaxation. You have to make sure that physiologically you can relax yourself as well as psychologically. So this involves being mindful of the release of tension in particular muscle groups while you're doing the mindfulness practice. And these normally take place as guided meditations. So how it will work is you will have a narrator speak with you for about 3 hours. Normally they're recordings which you can access online or be given by another individual. And they will run through different scenarios where you should consider each of these things. They'll tell you to think about your breathing, to think about how tense particular muscle areas may be. And the one which we used for this study was 3 minutes in length, so very short term. And personality has been shown to influence the effectiveness of mindfulness. Particular groups and the individual differences between particular people have been shown to have some people adhere more feasibly to these mindfulness interventions and others less so. So there were 2 personality traits which we were very interested in. The first of which was conscientiousness, and this is the extent to which one possesses traits of carefulness and diligency. So for example, if you are very mindful of your actions and you think about their consequences, you're likely to be someone who's conscientious. Then we have neuroticism, which is the extent to which someone is prone to feelings of anxiety, fear, worry, anger, and frustration. So we say that these people tend to be a little more emotionally variable to what happens around them, and both of these contribute to mindfulness. So how did we go about conducting this experiment? Well, we started off giving people personality questionnaires. In total, we had 93 students answer different questions assessing their personality, which got their scores for conscientiousness and also their scores for neuroticism. And then we ranked these people as either having high scores or low scores for both of these traits. After this, we gave them an inventory which measured their state anxiety in the present moment. And then we randomized the group and split them off into 2 subcomponents. The first of which underwent the mindfulness intervention and listened to this guided recording for about 3 minutes. Whereas the other group, the control group, had a 180-second break where they were basically instructed to do whatever they liked in that time. After, they then returned to fill out 1 more state anxiety inventory, which assessed their levels of state anxiety in the present moment. So what did we find? The first finding was that the implementation of this mindfulness intervention led to a reduction in their state anxiety. As we can see, the before and after conditions for the intervention of mindfulness had a stark decrease, which was statistically significant. But on the other hand, the control, not only did they not show any statistical significance for a change, but as you can see, there's a slight increase in their state anxiety scores. This might be due to the irritability of not having anything to do for 3 minutes, but they did not see any improvements. Now, across the board, mindfulness was very helpful. But then we also saw changes in scores of state anxiety that were dependent on these personality traits of neuroticism and conscientiousness. In the case of neuroticism, the mindfulness intervention showed higher changes in state anxiety if you were more neurotic than less neurotic. And as for the control, there wasn't much of a difference. However, I have to state that these differences weren't statistically significant. So they can't be generalized to say that neuroticism had a moderating effect on the mindfulness intervention, but what we can see was there were differences in the changes in state anxiety scores on a marginal level for these groups. And the same was true for conscientiousness. There were higher changes in these scores in state anxiety after they conducted the mindfulness intervention. And again, we're not seeing that big a difference for the control group, which still remains statistically insignificant. So what takeaways can we get from all of this? Well, firstly, state anxiety scores decreased after the implementation of a mindfulness intervention. And the most important thing here was that personality did not moderate these changes, which could be a good thing for trying to get that out to the public and making sure it's effective for everyone. Participants with higher levels of neuroticism displayed higher initial levels of state anxiety before the intervention, but then we didn't see any significant changes afterwards. And also participants with high levels of conscientiousness did not show high levels initially that we would have seen from state anxiety, and again, didn't show differences depending on their personality level as to the effectiveness of the implementation of mindfulness. And what are the applications? Well, firstly, this intervention is minimally intrusive. You can plug in headphones and you can listen to a recording anywhere on campus, at home, even in the bathtub if you wanted to. And we can see that it does help reduce state anxiety in the here and now. Also, given the resources that students are able to engage with at university, where there is an excess of demand for counselling, where students aren't always get referrals to GPs to speak about their mental health, and there are also stealth stigmas preventing themselves from speaking about their anxiety and mental health, it becomes clear that this might help specifically students combat the effects of anxiousness. And also, if we needed any more evidence, it's a sign to cut out a bottle of wine from your diet if that's what you're doing to reduce your anxiety on a day-to-day. Some quick acknowledgements. I'd like to thank my mentor, Ewan Hannaford, for helping me with the presentation, and also the Let's Talk About X team for basically running me through how to put this presentation together. And for anyone interested, the little italicized numbers throughout the presentation are for all the references if you want to go out and do some further reading on the topic. Thank you, and are there any questions?